controversial surveillance authority known as Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA, is set to expire. It is worth taking a moment to recall the history of this program. After 9/11/2001, the Bush administration launched a warrantless surveillance program without authorization from the courts or Congress. Years later, the committee heard dramatic testimony about White House officials pressuring Attorney General John Ashcroft from his hospital bed to reauthorize this surveillance program. He refused. After this surveillance program came to light, Congress retroactively authorized it in the FISA Amendments Act of 2008 as a temporary emergency tool to combat terrorism. That is what became Section 702.
Chair Dick Durbin, information far beyond Section 702 has now all been disclosed. Now, he did mention the FISA Amendments Reauthorization Act of 2017 in 2008. Congress passed updates to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, including the addition of Section 702. How does this relate to today? Just watch the hearings. We're going to cover how this all relates right back to your front door. You think that they're just going to surveil you someday? Well, my friends, that ship has already sailed. But what was most reprehensible, if you stepped away from the Ray trials for just a moment, was listening to the likes of the CIA and many other letter agencies begging for 702 to be reauthorized without change.
Section 702 is an authority that enables the United States to collect critical foreign intelligence on non-U.S. persons located outside the United States with the assistance of U.S. communications service providers. It provides the United States with indispensable insight into a diverse range of issues, from the conventional and cyber threats posed by China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, to cybersecurity and terrorism threats, to the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, to numerous other high-priority national security challenges.
Just one problem with that. There appears to be a lot of domestic priority also. If you've been watching anything that's happening, you'd understand that. But don't worry, I'm going to cover it for you in great detail. We still don't even know, and Reason titled this article very, very well, we still don't even know the full extent of the government warrantless electronic spying program. In her testimony, Sharon Bradford Franklin, given before the House Judiciary, it was stated 15 years after Section 702 was authorized by Congress as a tool for foreign surveillance, there's never been an accounting of how many Americans have had their electronic communication scooped up. Even attempt, but what did he just say there? Foreign. No, it's domestic. Even attempting to calculate such a figure would not be feasible, Sharon Bradford Franklin, chair of the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board, independent executive branch agency responsible for advocating on behalf of Americans' rights. Boy, that's a long lost art. Told the House committee during an April hearing, Franklin said the extent of that so-called incidental collection matters. Incidental collection, because the greater the number of Americans who are directly affected, the greater the need for Congress to ensure the safeguards throughout the 702 program are sufficient. In fact, she told the committee the very notion of incidental collection is a bit of a misnomer. It is illegal for intelligence agencies to use Section 702 to deliberately spy on Americans' communication, but any messages sent to someone in another country, well, that's fair game, folks. Thus, incidental collection is a feature of Section 702 and not a bug. And then we have these guys begging to allow it to continue to go through with no change because, well, we're going to get there.
The importance of this authority to our mission cannot be overstated. Data from FISA Section 702 helps us every day to understand the strategic intentions of foreign governments and certain non-state actors who pose threats to our interests. This source of intelligence is a big part of what keeps our leaders well informed about the threats we face.
George C. Barnes, National Security Agency, Central Security Service Deputy Director of the National Security Agency, It's the man who was just speaking on your screen before him, the ODNI General Counsel, everybody begging. But let's get into the details of exactly, well, some things you're going to know and some things you may not have seen yet. Even Yahoo News calling it out. The CIA is begging Congress to please keep spying on U.S. citizens. Federal agents urged lawmakers to reauthorize 702 without adding new reforms, without adding any new reforms, even though we now know of the rampant FISA abuses that could potentially slow down or impair operators' access to intelligence. The officials danced around advocates' concerns of civil liberty violations as Chris Wray dances around any direct answer to any question whatsoever, and instead chose to focus on a wide array of purported national security threats they say could become reality without this model piece of legislation. Big Brother personified. Multiple intelligence agents speaking Tuesday invoked the specter of September 11th and warned lawmakers new safeguards limiting agents' ability to rapidly access and share intelligence on Americans. To share intelligence on Americans could risk a repeat scenario. Well, isn't that just sweet? They're looking to protect us. But the very words I'm stating, according to the rules we're about to cover, well, put me on that list too. Watch House Republicans grill the FBI over alleged domestic surveillance abuses, but let's continue it forward. As a matter of fact, a House hearing today examines the FBI's alleged misuses of FISA's surveillance powers, preceding a debate over whether the program should exist. My stance is it should absolutely 100% not exist. Intelligence analysts use U.S. smartphone location data without warrants, memo says. Appears they don't care about FISA anyway. They're not even following the rules they have. They haven't since it was implemented. And then we're going to go and extend authorization to an act that they're not following the rules of already, giving them permission as if it's just simply okay. That's what they want. Now I'm going to speed it up. We have a lot of information to cover, because this impacts the very future, the very freedom of this great Republic of the United States of America. One of the biggest stories you're going to hear. I'm going to put it into a context so it's going to keep you awake at night when you find out what they're already doing. Before I do me a huge favor. Make sure you're subscribed to Lisa. Can't tell you how much it means to her. Make sure your bell is checked, because it's amazing. It appears notifications just don't go out the way they used to. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, you'll find Lisa on there also now. She's making appearances. She'll put a link above. Please subscribe. You want to see us both with no commercials, no interruptions, with exclusive content that is presented nowhere else? Then you got to get to restricted. We continue to ask because it is truly where we put all the information, unfiltered, uncensored, no commercials, no interruptions, beholden to no one. The only one who created that platform was me and Lisa, with our finances, with our own blood, sweat, and tears. And it has grown exponentially because people want news. And when you find out what they're watching, what they're listening to, every social media, every public platform, you'll understand why we created it. Because it is your safe bastion for real news. And you got to get there today. In order to help you out, 14 days for free for everyone who subscribes. Plus, at monthly checkout, put in discount code INDEPENDENCE. I'm going to give you $4 a month for 2 years. That's how much we believe in the platform. Get there now. But now, let's get back to this broadcast. Now, there was an article that framed in so much of this information. And it was authored by John Whitehead. If you don't know who he is, not only one of my favorite sources for news, but also a man who practices what he preaches. You see here a suit going all the way to the Supreme Court. Check it on the docket. It's right in front of you. October term 2020. That resulted in the U.S. Supreme Court refuses community caretaking exception to the Fourth Amendment. Do you know what community caretaking is? I'm going to show you how many states are already either heading towards or already within community caretaking. We're just looking out for we're just looking out for you. But I'm going to digress, and we're going to dive in. John Whitehead's article, Get Ready for the Next Phase of the Government's War on Thought Crimes, Mental Health Roundups, and Involuntary Detentions. You think you know everything about this topic? I hope you do. If you don't, I'm going to open your eyes here. I'm going to keep you awake at night. This is far deeper and already entrenched than most can imagine. Under the guise of public health and safety, the government could use mental health care as a pretext for targeting and locking up dissidents, activists, and anyone unfortunate enough to be placed on a government watch list. Heck, we're already there. My broadcast yesterday asked the question, is the FBI any different than the KGB? What we're about to discuss has already happened in the Soviet Union. It's no different, and we're moving in lockstep in that direction. You know who's on your screen? New York Mayor, hope you do. Eric Adams used an example like this. A young man hangs out on a street corner in Midtown Manhattan every day outside the entrance of a big chain restaurant. He is shadowboxing and talks to himself, and beneath him are poster boards with multiple conspiracy theories. The restaurant's manager worried the man could be scaring off customers and calls 911. Should the responding officer remove the man to a hospital, forcing him if he refuses? What law was he breaking? You notice how that's not mentioned in the article, but it gets far worse than that. Eric Adams promised that there was a clinical resource for his law that would be made available to the New York Police Department so that all of us would be assured that there would be no unlawful sweeps. Then it turns out nobody used it. How should we handle this? Not sure if this is legal or not. We found this person. Under long-standing New York state law, police may bring anyone to the hospital against their will if they appear to be mentally ill or pose a physical threat to themselves or others. Just stop at the mentally ill. Who determines who's mentally ill? That's right, they started a line so you can call and determine, as a police officer, if that person you're seeing is mentally ill. Or what if you simply disagree with their political beliefs? You can consider that a form of mental illness in your book, right? Well, of course, they didn't want that to happen, so they put up a helpline. The helpline, in which not one single officer called. Not one. Suspected mental illness, including whether they look severely intoxicated, appear malnourished, or carry firmly held beliefs not congruent with cultural ideas. Whose cultural ideas? These were the pretext, the precogs, to why that officer could take action against you. Other factors that could qualify a person for forced hospitalization include their willingness to engage in meaningful discussion and whether they have excessive fears of specific stimuli. A person's refusal of voluntary treatment recommendations could also be seen as evidence of diminished rational thought. This is happening in the United States of America right now. They want to continue to extend FISA to get even more details, and this will all coagulate together shortly because it's all the same story. Police in Jackson, Mississippi want access to live home security video, alarming privacy advocates. What we'll be able to do is get a location, draw a circle around it, and pull up every camera within a certain radius. If someone is running out of a building, we can follow and trace one. If someone says, I want my Ring door camera to be used, we'll be able to use it. But the idea of police accessing real-time video from a Ring camera, one of the best-selling brands of doorbell cameras, has thrust Jackson into a national debate over law enforcement's increasing reliance on private companies to expand their surveillance networks and the privacy risks that result. I don't believe the government should be tapping into my Ring, Jackson City Council member Stamp said, questioning whether there was enough safeguards to prevent technology from being abused. I don't believe we should be sponsoring this. Now remember, the basis of all this, we already know FISA has been abused. Everyone's concerned about their own privacy. They're concerned about how local, state, and federal government is abusing their surveillance privileges against we the people. New York subway using AI to track fare evasion. Police will pilot a program to live stream Amazon Rig cameras. As a matter of fact, 2,000 U.S. police and fire departments already have partnered with Amazon. How much more surveillance power should we put in the hands of the U.S. government? If you just listened to Chris Wray's testimony, you would say none. While these programs are always, like everything is, involved in what appears to be a very noble and just cause, it never ends up that way, does it? When combined with advances in mass surveillance technology, artificial intelligence power programs that can track people by their biometrics and behavior, or smartphones, or mental health sensor data, or threat assessments, or behavioral sensor warnings, or pre-crime initiatives, or red flag gun laws, or mental health first aid programs, they can say anything is a threat. Anything. A thought crime is now a reality. Just look at the news. Extreme MAGAs, domestic terrorists, domestic extremists. These terms are bundled, and I'm going to show you within the FBI bulletins themselves. So what wouldn't qualify as you being mentally unstable and them having the authorization to force hospitalize you? Police seize on COVID-19 technology to expand global surveillance. This is on the Associated Press, the U.S., which relied on a hodgepodge of state and local quarantine orders to ensure compliance with COVID rules. The federal government took the opportunity to build out its surveillance toolkit, including 2 contracts in 2020 worth $24.9 million to the data mining and surveillance company Palantir Technologies to support the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services in their pandemic response. Documents obtained by the immigrant rights group Just Futures Law under the Freedom of Information Act and shared with the AP showed that the federal officials contemplated how to share data that went far beyond COVID-19. There's very few government agencies that once granted power, A, give it back, or B, don't abuse it. The possibility includes integrating identifiable patient data such as mental health, substance use, behavioral health information from group homes, shelters, jails, detox facilities, and schools. Why not? Why not? Totalitarian regimes such as the Soviet Union, back to John Whitehead again, also declare dissidents mentally ill and consign political prisoners to prison disguised as a psychiatric hospital. This has already happened. It's one and the same. Where they could be isolated from the rest of society, their ideas discredited and subject to electric shocks, drug, and various medical procedures to break them physically and mentally. In addition to declaring political dissidents mentally unsound, and there's the key. In addition to declaring political dissidents mentally unsound, and the Biden administration, through their vigorous use of MAGA extremist, extreme MAGA, MAGA this, MAGA that, is already classifying. We now know between Twitter and Facebook, the FBI had information, didn't want it disclosed. Rather, they allowed them to shutter post to assure we, the people, didn't get all the information. And if we believed in that information, then obviously we're mentally unsound. An administrative process for dealing with individuals who were considered a bad influence on others or troublemakers. How far has this gone? How much can we trust them? I have zero trust right now in the FBI. The FBI knew Russiagate was a lie, but hid the truth. The FBI hired social media surveillance firm that labeled Black Lives Matter organizers threat actors. See, I'm not going to sit on one side of the aisle here because this isn't a one side of the aisle issue. It never has been. But they like classifying it that way, don't they? FBI ramps up spending to fight MAGA terrorism. You see, it's already being done. You're already being cataloged and classified. DHS looking at tracking travel of domestic extremists. Who qualifies? Well, according to them, anybody who disagrees with them. It's in their own documentation. Fact check. FBI is not using threat tags on parents who protest at school board meetings. False. Based on our research, we rate false to claim that the FBI's counterterrorism division adds threat tags to parents who protest in schools. That rating is false because we know they did. Mainstream media is wrapped up in this just like social media is. Ray admits Bank of America, other businesses share innocent Americans' records with FBI all the time. Come on. We got that FISA over there, and they may have sent a message to somebody in another country. Maybe it was just a family member on vacation, but that's in another country, so I have the right to go ahead and get all your information now. But you see, Ray doesn't care. Domestic or foreign, we've now seen through these trials, everybody's fair game. for the KGB, FBI. Verizon has been handing over your records of every call to the FBI. Of course they have. Bank of America, Verizon, you want to continue to go through the list? It's all a part of what's called the administrative process. The obnoxious person may not be guilty of a crime, but if, in the opinion of the local authorities, this happened in the Soviet Union, his presence in a particular place is prejudicial to public order or incompatible with public tranquility, he may be arrested without warrant, may be held for 2 weeks to 2 years in prison, and may then be removed by force to any other place within the limits of the empire, and there be under police surveillance for a period of 1 to 10 years. Welcome, that's what it was. And now with all our surveillance devices everywhere, including on your front door, it's here now. It's not if or when, it's happening. Red flag laws and the consequences of good intentions. Success of red flag laws might depend on mental health teams. See how they're coagulating all this together now? Your very mental health, in their opinion, will define their ability to take action on you. That's why so many are fighting against any further surveillance, such as 720, FISA, and I can name a litany of others. Because then they're just building a profile, which they already are, your threat score. Your pre-crime policing is closer than you think, and it's freaking people out. Hartford is embracing a sophisticated surveillance apparatus that some civil liberty advocates and residents fear mark an ominous trend. You know, those insurance companies, we're going to make sure you're safe, and we can't trust your opinion. And your freedom kind of blocks us from view of a lot of stuff you may be doing that we're unaware of, and we really need to kind of know what you're doing so we can make sure we charge you the right rates. That's how it works, and it is working. That the government is using the charge of mental illness as the means by which to immobilize and disarm its critics is diabolical. With one stroke of a magistrate's pen, these individuals are declared mentally ill, locked away against their will, and stripped of their constitutional rights. How many examples have we seen of that? Back in 2009, you remember the veterans being classified as extremists? We're going to come back to this story because this classification has been going on for a long time, not only for veterans, but for everyone. Right-wing extremism, current economic and political climate fueling resurgence and radicalization and recruitment. Within it, it states those that are mainly anti-government, rejecting federal authority in favor of state or local authority. That's how our Constitution's written, by the way, guys. Just hate to call that out. Uh-oh, I'm on your watch list now. Or rejecting government authority entirely. It may include groups and individuals that are dedicated to a single issue, such as opposition to abortion or immigration. Makes you a right-wing extremist. Police get help with confronting veterans. Back to that story. Why did they get help? We can't just use blazing guns approach anymore when dealing with disturbed individuals who are highly trained in all kinds of tactical operations, including guerrilla warfare. Executive Director of the Upper Midwest Community Policing Institute. That goes beyond the experience of the SWAT team. So what did the U.S. government do? They trained the local police department how to handle those that understand military tactics. That's not suspect or questionable at all, seeing the veterans are those that adore this country, gave their lives to fight for this country, that put their lives on the line to fight for this country. Anybody can be cataloged at any time. Leak of classified information prompts inquiry. And that came from an NSA official. And what happened to him? When he told about the leaks, they found him mentally unbalanced. Sorry, can't accept your information. You, sir, are mentally unbalanced by 2 psychiatric evaluations ordered by the department that he was ratting out that confirmed that he was mentally unbalanced. Very slippery slope now, isn't it? NYPD officer Adrian Schoolcraft had his home raided, and he was handcuffed to a gurney and taken into emergency custody for alleged psychiatric episode. It was later discovered, by the way of an internal investigation, that his superiors were retaliating against him for reporting police misconduct. And what did they do? They used the mental claim against him. Sorry, you're unfit. You have an issue, sir. Now you're gone. John Whitehead again. Rutherford Institute. Need to go check this out, folks. Another case. In an unexpected ruling handed down today by Circuit Court Judge Alan Sherritt, the judge dismissed the government's case against Brandon Robb. I hope you heard about this one. The Marine who was arrested by local police and FBI agents, detained in a psychiatric ward, and forced to undergo psychological evaluation based solely on the controversial nature of lines he wrote in a song. His song lyrics. Those who say, beware, it's coming. It's already here. It's already happening. Each state has its own set of civil or involuntary commitment laws. These laws are extension of two legal principles, which allows the government to intervene on behalf of citizens who cannot act in their own best interest, and police power, which requires the state to protect the interest of its citizens. We feel, as the nanny state, that you're not mentally sound. We believe that your neighbors might be affected by this, so we're going to detain you. Now, what if we give them more information? What if we allow them greater access to more of our information? They could find anything within any given moment that would convict you in a heartbeat, I guarantee it. Just think about when you're upset, you say something sideways, you sit at a bar, you have a conversation, you text something, all that. Imagine if they have full access, what they will do. They'll build a matrix of which you'll never escape. The problem, of course, is that the diagnosis of mental illness, while a legitimate concern for some Americans, has over time become a convenient way by which the government and its corporate partners can penalize certain unacceptable social behaviors. In fact, in recent years, we've witnessed those who resist authority as suffering from oppositional defiant disorder, ODD, defined as a pattern of disobedience, hostile, and defiant behavior towards authority figures. Oh boy. There goes MLK. There goes Mahatma Gandhi, because they would all be diagnosed with that and would have been shut down, and we would never have realized some of the greats that they helped to realize. Well, now the government wants to grab that definition. They want to use it. This larger trend in American governance whereby dissent is criminalized. And dissenters are censored, silenced, declared unfit for society. They're already censoring us. They're already silencing us. What is the natural progression? It's already happening, but you guessed it. Turned out to be outcast or exiled. That's the next step. The connection between suicides and mass shootings. If you have a gun in your house, you have tripled your risk that someone will kill themselves with it. There's the logic. So we need to get that gun. In their own manual, by the way, in case you're even remotely concerned about this. Interchangeably, within that manual, they use domestic right-wing terrorists, anti-government, and right-wing extremists. All interchangeable. Like it's nothing. The new way police are surveilling you, calculating your threat score, told you it's coming. Google picks up behavioral sensing company. Make sure they can monitor, track, and score your behavior. Democrats break rank to back $24 billion boost to Pentagon budget for what? The same government that keeps re-upping the National Defense Authorization Act, which allows the military to detain American citizens with no access to friends, family, or the courts if their government believes them to be a threat, and they keep upping the budget. And they keep building more fusion centers between federal and state and local governments in a community near you. Because there's that growing threat of right-wing terror. Those who share a fear that the government will confiscate firearms, or belief in the approaching collapse of government and the economy. You can't believe in that. That's bad thought. They can come get you. Go ahead, let that sink in. Sorry, John. Stole your words. John White's words, not mine. Now consider the ramifications of giving police that kind of authority in order to preemptively neutralize a potential threat, and you'll understand why some might view these mental health roundups with trepidation. No matter how well-meaning the politicians make these encroachments on our rights appear, in the right or wrong hands, benevolent plans can easily be put to malevolent purposes. Even the most well-intentioned government law or program can be and has been perverted, corrupted, and used to advance illegitimate purposes once profit and power are added to the equation. I could never have imagined stating something that succinct. The war on terror, the war on drugs, the war on illegal immigration, the war on COVID, all of these programs started out as legitimate responses to pressing concerns that have since become weapons of compliance and control into government hands. For instance, the very same mass surveillance technologies that were supposedly so necessary to fight the spread of COVID-19 are now being used to stifle dissent, persecute activists, harass marginalized communities, and link people's health information to other surveillance and law enforcement tools. It's already happened. It's already here. It's not if or when. It's now. You need to read this word for word. Mental Health Roundup's Next Phase of Government's War on Thought Crimes by John and Nisha Whitehead. My hats are off. I hope I've opened your eyes. I hope I've made you realize it's not down the road, my friends. It's already happening. And they're sitting there, the CIA begging to allow 720 FISA to go through without change after all the abuse that we have now seen in these hearings of rampant government overreach. And that is something everybody needs to be aware of. We love you all. Until next time, Godspeed and God bless. Justice Knight, signing out.